Well, week 2 results of the ProQuest London season are in, so let's discuss where the meta has headed thus far, and if any of this is going to hold true once the -IO deck releases this Friday. So, what you see here was last week, week 1, and the results therein. Of course, Aurora Shooting Star, we talked about last week, was the highest single point getter, but right behind her was Enigma at 22 wins and Azalea at 10 wins, and then it's sort of a natural gradient down past that. Here is what we're looking at this week. Enigma takes the top spot, and Aurora now falls to second place, and a decent drop off from 23 down to 18 wins for Aurora, and right behind her now is Viscerai. So we have two rune blades on the top, and then right behind them is another rune blade. Florian shoots way up, which we're going to look at here in a second in a little bit more detail. Shoots way up to 12 wins. New hovers around 10 wins. Previous to this, New was sitting at 9 wins, as you can see there on the screen, 9 wins, but here now at 10 wins, so actually gaining. And Azalea fell hard on her face from 10 wins down to 5 wins. From there, you see Zen has charged forward to 4 wins. KO at 3, still kind of playing in the bottom of the barrel there, even though still very strong. Vincent picked up 3 wins this time around. Max also got 2. Prism got 2. Acilio makes it onto the board, picking up 2 ProQuest wins. I think this is perhaps the perfect place for him to be. This sort of like mid-tier competitive level seems to fit him rather well because he can do incredibly powerful things, and I think he's starting to improve as a hero that people are really latching onto, and we'll see if he can make it sort of, I guess, impactful in any way, shape, or form at the higher level tournaments. Verdant's right behind him, so the 2 wizards right there from the most recent Rosetta set with 2 wins, and then a bevy of other heroes. Riptide picked up a win. Bravo Showstopper actually moves the needle, picks up a win. Kano down at 1. -IO gets her first win of many. I'm just going to say it right now, of many that will be to come once her new deck releases. Dash Inventor Extraordinaire, which we will talk about here in just a moment. Levia only 1 win. Fi makes it onto the list again, and Victor actually picks up a win. Now let's look at this in a little bit more detail. Now my good buddy TCG Talk sent over an image with a spreadsheet that he had kind of broken down and put the numbers together, and I wanted to use that, so I retrofitted it and I put it in myself, and I did a couple of other things with it, but I want to break down to you what we see from week to week. So here are the numbers for the first week, and as you see, Aurora sitting on top with 23 wins, Enigma, Azalea, so on and so forth. We talked about this last week with a couple of these heroes that I want to point out. First things first, if you go, Viscerai sitting at 7 wins, Florian at 7 wins as well. Zen had 3 wins, KO still at 2 wins. And then anybody else that I want to point out, not particularly on this screen, but once we look at this data isolated for week 2, you can see a little bit of a change, right? So this is week 2. Enigma now at 23 wins. I've sorted it by week 1 and week 2 wins. So the previous, this one right here, this is week 1 with Aurora on top. Week 2, here we have Enigma climbing to the top and Aurora right behind her. Viscerai makes a huge move from what was 7 wins here, as you can see there, to a total of 15 wins, and Florian perhaps the biggest move in my mind of everything that we've seen. And I was down on Florian, but I will say now I'm getting more and more interested in seeing him kind of flourish, because he's got a couple of different builds that are really working well for him in the current format. He can play a more, I don't even want to call it an OTK style, it is kind of like an OTK style. He can play a more OTK style where he builds up a bunch of rune chants in the mid to late game, or really even starting off in the fairly early game, can build them up like rapidly and then slam them at you at some point, very much like the Turtle Burst Viscerai list. But he can also play this mid-range game plan as well, that has just a massive amount of value in the late game. I played against it a couple of times, and I ended up beating the couple of variants that I played against, so I kind of wrote it off a little bit, and that was wrong of me to do so. And so Florian, with both of those builds, is proving that those tweaks that are coming across are making it work in this meta. And when you look at it, this many, and I will even point out Vincent right here, this many rune blades, all of the rune blades are seeing success right now. The reason that is the case is because Enigma is setting the pace for the meta. If you can remove her board and present consistent threats, a la what rune blades can do fairly easily with rune chance, lots of rune chance, or in Aurora's case, break points, and in Vincent's case, a mixture of both, then you have the line that you need to take to win against an Enigma that just says, you have to present this damage, you have to remove these pieces off my board, or you have to be able to weather the storm of, 6, 7 damage with disruption, 9 with a little bit of hand disruption, and be able to push past that damage threshold that I just sent. And all of these rune blades are able to do that. Plus, you've got Aurora, who's arguably the premier aggro deck, arguing personally with Viserai, because Viserai is really climbing up very quickly. So you have these two premier aggro decks that go toe-to-toe against each other, that have the capacity to play against each other. Florian that has a switchboard plan, which is always huge, and Vincent, which just so underratedly can push massive damage if not disrupted. And you have this recipe for success against Enigma, who is is not pedestrian. I don't want to say that she's a pedestrian hero, but she's a hero that very much centers around the board and numbers that she can present. She's kind of, in a way, like a numbers deck that snowballs. And if you allow her to snowball, obviously she wins. But if you don't, it's pretty predictable what she ends up doing, at least in her current iteration. She's going to play a big disruptive attack if she can. She's going to build pieces of the board. She's going to play out a Mira guy and ask you to remove it. And if you don't, she wins the game. And so if you can play around that with these types of heroes, you have success. Now, the other things that are having success are heroes that are playing against or playing towards this second tier of the meta. So what beats these types of heroes? Disruption. Spoiler alert, if you can disrupt a rune blade and then they stumble over their own 2 feet with a rune blade hand, you can find some wins, and that's kind of what Nu does in this whole scenario. And I would also argue that Zen is incredibly well positioned if the meta is all rune blade. Why? Because he can go toe-to-toe with their aggression. He can play a sort of a turn cycle game where he blocks with 2 cards and tries to send like dagger, 1 for 4 type scenario where you're playing out this value-based cycle until you find a combo hand. And then he can, in late game scenarios, pop 12 Petal Kasaya and stop this sort of last gasp like damage throw where they just chuck a bunch of rune chants at you, or play an Arc Lightning and send a bunch of pings and a bunch of breakpoints at you. So he's incredibly well positioned right now, in my opinion. Like I said, I've been playing him a lot. If I would have gone to my recent Proquest, I would have played him because I feel like he's pretty solid in the meta as it stands. And he can remove boards for Enigma just like Aurora can, essentially. So he's in a good spot as well. Big drops are KO. He went from 2 to 3 wins this week, but I'm not very high on what KO is doing right now. I think a huge drop off. Well, we'll talk about. We should just go over to it. Here's the total wins of all the heroes thus far. Enigma has the most with 45, Aurora at 41. Viserai has now claimed 22, which means he is moving on the leaderboard. We'll take a look at the leaderboard here in a second. Moving fairly well. Florian's gotten a respectable 19, along with Nu, respectable 19 as well. Nu feels like one of those heroes that's just going to be a really solid option into like almost every meta, which makes her a great kind of like comfort pick. If you just pick her up and just feel very good into the meta, you learn her ins and outs and just how she functions on a disruptive axis. You just run her out there into meta after meta. I think she's going to be around for a good while, and she's just going to do really well. Azalea, even though she had a massive drop off, is okay with 15 wins. I don't know if you even want to call it okay. Vincent made a big stride this week with going from 1 win to 3 wins, so up a lot. The question will be, what will he do in week 3 when the new -IO deck comes out? And this is the real talking point. If we go to this total screen, Dash.io right now is, in my estimation, going to shoot to the top of this list. I think she will be adopted rather quickly. I think she will be welcomed with open arms by most of the aggressive players, and I think there's going to be a lot of players that see this and go, yeah, I can figure that out very quickly, or have already been putting in the time with her, and she is going to be higher played than a lot of people think, and she's going to claim a lot of wins. That is my prediction. It could turn out that not a lot of people pick her up because it's like your week 3 ProQuest is on Saturday and you buy the deck on Friday, you know, that sort of thing. And so maybe it's a scarcity issue, whereas like people are still trying to get their copy of the Armory deck because that's the hero they want to run out there. But I do believe she's the premier aggro deck going forward. She does have some volatility issues if she doesn't find certain pieces. Like if she's not finding Cerebellum Processor in the first 3 turns of the game, then your aggressive heroes like Aurora, Viserai, and I'm looking at Zen, and some people are also mentioning, where's Fi? Those heroes have the capacity to just close out large amounts of damage against her and just put her to a really low life total. The crazy part is, though, and I described this in a video previous, you can have her to a really low life total. I was playing a game against a Dash.io where I was Zen and it was 22-4, and I literally had to keep 1 card in hand so that I could win the game on my turn no matter what they did, and they proceeded to find 2 Cerebellum Processors on a turn, play like 7, 8, 9 cards, and pushed 30 damage, so I had to give literally everything just to survive, and they won on the subsequent turn. So that is very possible now with Dash.io. She can just go, oops, you're dead, and that's a scary proposition. So she will be the best deck in the format. And what happens to these other decks? I think Aurora and I think Viserai stick around. I think the ninjas, therefore, could feast still on these types of heroes like the Zens of the world. I'm not sure what Enigma does. I don't know if Enigma can stick around against a hero with this much aggression. But I also am very curious to see if there are, decks that try to rise up to counter a hero that has this many non-blocks in their deck, this many, I would almost say, clunky hands. It'll be interesting to see what happens in week 3 with Dash.io going to the S tier of the meta. And if you want more information on where I think this meta is going to go, leave a comment down below. Maybe we can put together like a little tier list video or just a discussion about where this is going to be going for Worlds, because Worlds is closing in very quickly. And finally, let's round out everything by talking about the Living Legend leaderboard, because Dash Inventor Extraordinaire is inching her way closer to her Living Legend, but I don't think she's going to get there. I mean, she got 1 win this week. She's going to get outpaced completely. Even the new builds with like Count Your Blessings and like super defensive, I don't think they have the ability to stand up to Dash.io. And I think this Dash.io number is going to skyrocket. She's at 72 points. Mark that down. She's at 72 points. Write that on a sticky note, leave it on your desk. Let's see where she sits next week at this time, because I have a feeling it's going to be a good bit more than that. Aurora, a huge amount of movement, 210 points already, but I don't think you should worry. Look, at the beginning of the year, we were worried about KO, about KO's position, about how fast he got to 657. I mean, he passed up Katsu already. But now look, he's at this sort of mediocre spot in the meta where you can go and you could play him, and you could win a lot of games and you could win a tournament with him. But there are other options that do it just as well, maybe better, depending on how you look at it. And he's in a comfortable position. This is the natural progression of metas, and Aurora, even though sitting at 210, I'm not really sure, or very worried, I should say. I'm not worried that she's going to just, skyrocket and put herself in this weird precarious position to not adopt her. Kano, a lot of players were thinking that Kano was going to make his way out at the end of the year. And, I saw someone post this on Twitter, and I think they're 100% correct. There's a lot of people that were like, okay, Kano's going to feast on this new set, and of course that changes a little bit when they ban a bunch of books and things like that. But look at his position right now. Just because of the way the meta is shaped up, there are aggressive heroes that can put him on a clock. there is a hero that makes it really uncomfortable in the form of Enigma that really makes it a difficult matchup. And you can argue that it's, Enigma favored, that it's Kano favored. I would say it's slightly Enigma favored. You have to be a very good Kano player, and you have to be very patient to play this correctly, and you have to have a couple of things break your right way for Kano to win that matchup. Those things make it very difficult for him to survive in the meta. And honestly, it's that way for all the Wizards. Wizard right now, even though they just got a full set of cards, still has a smaller card pool than most other classes, and still just has a quality problem to some of their effects, their keywords, and their overall playability in the meta. And you know what? That's okay. Wizard and a specific class doesn't have to be the best thing in the format. Just keep in mind that when you see something like Kano and you're like, oh god, I hope he goes quickly, it's not going to happen. He's not going to be moving out very quickly, and you might be in a tough spot to be running him out there unless you're just one of the best players in your area playing as Kano. So I'd be okay seeing him go down and play, because I totally understand it. Viserai gobbling up points. He sat down here in the 500s for years, and now here he is, shooting back up thanks to the support that came in Rosetta. And then a bunch of heroes here that you could look at and go, are they ever going to move? Vincett's going to start maybe moving. Verdant's grabbed a couple of points, but way down at the bottom. Acilio grabbed a couple points way down at the bottom. These are heroes I would look at and go, hey, if you like these heroes, they do some powerful things, and they're going to be around for the long term, so maybe pick them up. Same thing with Florian as well. And Max could benefit from some of the new cards in the Dash.io Armory deck, so you might consider picking him up as well if you're looking for a hero for the long term. So that's week 2. That's everything you need to know about the meta right now. If you're looking for more information, make sure you press the button and make the number go to another number, because that's what we do here on the channel. As always, everybody, thanks for watching.